Welcome to Boxing During Dinner, and we started with the Randazzo olive oil because every time Mark passes by the table, he grabs the olive oil and does this, which freaked out Alex's camera now. Yeah. But that's what he does. So we want to show it.
There it is.
Mark's always wanting to show the olive oil. That's Mark Randazzo back in his fighting day, and the olive oil is very good. I only cook in Randazzo's olive oil. Honest to God.
He's telling the truth. I don't really cook all that often, so I'm not really using olive oil.
I cook all the time.
It's because he's the wife in the relationship with.
Exactly.
Honey, can I cook? And his wife wears the pants. Anna, that was a shout out for you.
Oh, David. You know who that is?
I do.
But we will mention it. Anyway, Boxing During Dinner. Lots to talk about this week. And David, I want to start off really quickly. We'll take our time with it. But quickly, as in we're starting quickly.
Yeah.
And talking about this instead about food.
It's really not happening
stuff.
all that quickly anymore.
It's not happening. No. Chavez against Sergio Martinez is finally going to happen. Officially announced this week. I was at the opening press conference in Los Angeles. Not to drop, that I was there, but
but you were.
I got to speak to the guys. But this fight is an interesting fight, David, because even Bob Arum said a year ago. He would have been embarrassed to put Chavez Jr. in against Martinez just for the fact that Chavez wasn't ready. He said Martinez would have literally kicked his ass all over the ring.
Yeah.
Those are Bob Arum's words, not mine. and he's a promoter. But it's been apparent to Bob Arum, it's been apparent to me, to you, to anybody who watches boxing that Chavez Jr., like night and day, has improved so much in the last year and a half. It's crazy, but like you said in your article on BoxingDuringDinner.com, and like we've spoken about before, Chavez Jr. is no longer a joke. He's a legit fighter.
Yeah, I mean, it's like essentially everything that you just said. This guy would have been perceived as just a name and little more. And you could see why Martinez would want the fight, whether he was competitive or not, because it's a big name, big money fight for him. But Chavez Jr., one, big guy, weighs 160 pounds. When he weighs in the day before, the night of, this guy's at 180 pounds, so we're talking cruiserweight. Sergio Martinez had a beef about moving up to super middleweight. I don't think there's a guy in that division who rehydrates to the weight that Sergio Martinez does. That Chavez does as a middleweight. The guy's a relentless body puncher. I'd say one of the best punchers to the body in the sport. That's crazy to say that now compared to where he was just a short year ago. And he doesn't seem to tire out. He's doing more mature things in the ring. You saw that he was kind of feeling out Andy Lee. Imagine that he'll do that a little bit with Martinez. I think Martinez should still be the favorite here, but not by much.
Right, and it's crazy. I heard the opening line in Vegas will be 8-5 in favor of Martinez. A year ago, we're talking about 10-1, 12-1 in favor of Martinez. Martinez, one of my favorite fighters, and I don't hide it. Him and Carlos Molina, great.
Sergio Martinez, so handsome.
But Sergio Martinez, aside from being handsome, he's a great fighter. He fights a lot like Roy Jones used to back in the day. That same style, this hand way down here, this hand here. He's quick. He is 37 years old, but he started fighting late in his life, so it's not like he's taking that many punches. He's one of the elite fighters in boxing, and now fighting a Julio Cesar Chavez, who I think will give him a good fight because he's tough.
Yeah.
One thing you can't question about Chavez, he comes in, his face like way up here, so he's gonna get hit, by the counter puncher Martinez. But one thing you can't take away from Chavez, David, that guy has balls.
Yeah, he really does.
That guy has balls. He's not afraid to get hit, and he has the genes. And you know what? Like fighter after fighter, we've seen the Marvis Frazier's, we've seen the sons of former champions fail in boxing, but Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. seems to have, maybe not to the extent of what his dad had, because he's a legend. Right. But he seems to have that it in boxing, and it seems to have carried on from father to son.
Slowly but surely, he's building his own resume. The interesting thing here is, let's look back to his fight with Andy Lee. Andy Lee is, among 160-pounders, arguably one of the biggest punchers in that division, when he chooses to, of course. But he threw a lot of good punches at Chavez, and Chavez walked through them. I mean, never even seemed to be bothered by them. I think that's a storyline in this fight with Sergio Martinez, because if removing the Paul Williams fight, other than that, I don't think that Sergio Martinez is a powerful puncher. He's fast. He wears guys down with his volume and things like that. But if Chavez doesn't respect his power, which I imagine it's pretty early on in the fight, he's not going to. If if Martinez can't find a way to hit and not get hit and stay away, late in the rounds of this fight, I mean, Martinez has incredible conditioning, and I think that is what is the difference in this fight.
Great conditioning.
But if for whatever reason Chavez slows him with body punches, and in those later rounds, Martinez, doesn't have the wheels to get away from him, that to me is really the X factor here. Is Chavez is the body puncher, Martinez has the conditioning. Which one is going to kind of show up, precedence? I think that makes this a really intriguing fight.
And Bob Arum said something interesting. He said Chavez Jr.'s chin hasn't been tested. But you could argue that it has been tested and that he's passed with flying colors.
Yeah, I agree.
Now, if his chin is that good, and he has that relentless style of fight like his dad did, and this is the person who's picking Sergio Martinez to win the fight by decision. I like Sergio Martinez. I think he's one of the elite fighters in boxing. But this could turn out to be a Meldrick Taylor, Chavez Sr. type fight.
Yeah.
In which Chavez Jr. could wear down Martinez round by round, even though he's losing rounds. But then late in the fight, the body punching could get to Martinez. I mean, Martinez hasn't been attacked to the body like that probably ever in his career.
Yeah.
Not even in the Margarito fight, because he was early on in his career. He lost the fight. But this is new territory for him. Yeah,
the body punching is like we said, it was the X factor. Body punchers is essentially you're making a deposit, small little deposits into the bank each round. When the 12th round comes around, if you put enough in there, you withdraw. And like you said, the Chavez Sr. Meldrick Taylor example is perfect. That is a scenario that I can see happening. I'm psyched. I think it's a great middleweight fight, and this might be the first good middleweight fight to look forward to in a long time.
And David, in Los Angeles on Tuesday, I got to meet Julio Cesar Chavez Sr. I had never met him. I had been near him in person. I never shook his hand. When I was a kid, I hated Julio Cesar Chavez because he beat every fighter that I liked.
Yeah.
He beat Meldrick Taylor. I cried that day. I was like 8, 9 years old. I cried like a kid because I was a freaking kid.
You're still the same size as one.
And I'm still a kid.
That's your weekly Armando size joke. There you go.
and then in 1993, when he fought Pernell Whitaker, and it was a draw, which is bullshit.
Yeah.
Whitaker's my favorite fighter of all time. So I have beef with Julio Cesar Chavez. He ruined parts of my childhood. But when I met the guy, I'm like, this guy's a freaking legend, man. And it's funny. He told Junior in the press conference, "You respect. You be the gentleman. You be the guy that respects, the guy that looks good. Let me do the trash talking." And he's been trash talking Sergio Martinez, which is making it interesting for a legend like that to trash Sergio Martinez. But speaking of trash, David, also on September 15th, and Jose Cito Lopez.
That was transitional material.
It's called transition in TV,
that's what it was.
in case you didn't know.
Yeah.
Speaking of trash, and I don't want to trash Jose Cito Lopez, because you know what? He's a good kid. He's a hard fighter. He accomplished the impossible against Victor Ortiz. Nobody was giving him a shot. But Jose Cito Lopez is a 140-pounder who overachieved at 147 and now fights a 154-pound champion in Canelo Alvarez. And you know what? I'm sick of this shit.
Ooh.
At 154, Canelo Alvarez, he's 20, 21, poor freaking kid. You know what? He's a world champion. At whatever age Canelo is, 19, 20, 21, I don't really care at this point. Wilfred Benitez was already a champion.
Yeah.
He fought Sugar Ray Leonard, Duran, and Hearns. So what's his freaking excuse? If you're a world champion, you're supposed to fight the elite fighters. What's this crap of he's not ready?
I'm actually going to disagree with you on both points. That Jose Cito Lopez is in over his head, I disagree. I also disagree with the fact that Canelo was being protected. Let's take a step back and say that first, Canelo was supposed to be in the ring with Paul Williams. Tragic motorcycle accident. Paul's now paralyzed from the waist down. That doesn't happen. James Kirkland signs on to join the fight. Less than a day later, withdraws for a unhealed injury. He wants more money. Victor Ortiz, a legitimate contender, a possible threat. Jose Cito Lopez breaks the guy's jaw in 2 places. I don't think that this is really Canelo's fault this time. I do think that he should be fighting a real 154-pounder his next out. If he wanted to keep the September 15th date, which is Golden Boy's fault, then I understand, that he's taking the best thing available.
Right, but to play devil's advocate, you could go from that list and say Paul Williams is a shot fighter. He hasn't looked good since maybe Antonio Margarito, maybe Sergio Martinez, the first fight. Then I could also say James Kirkland is a fighter that's been exposed, a fighter with no chin who got knocked out by a Japanese fighter with no power and almost got knocked out by Alfredo Angulo.
Yeah.
Who, you know what? He had bigger fish to fry at that moment. Victor Ortiz is a guy that had been proven as a quitter, a guy who couldn't handle the heat. and he was gonna fight a bigger guy in Canelo, because Canelo's a pretty big freaking guy. But you know what? The Victor Ortiz fight, to be honest, was a fight that, and we even spoke about it here on Boxing During Dinner. I was excited for, but to the point of Josecito Lopez, he's a good fighter. But at 154, David, I mean, that's jumping 2 divisions. You're fighting a guy that's supposedly the elite fighter in the division. And for as much as we crack on Canelo, or at least I crack on Canelo, Canelo's not a bad fighter. It's just a shitty fight on a shitty day. And I don't know how many people are actually going to show up. Because I'm not Mexican. But
You've got a lot of opinions tonight, by the way.
But I know a lot of Mexicans. Alex and I work with a lot of Mexicans. Julio Cesar Chavez is like Joe DiMaggio is to Italians. He's a legend.
Okay.
And if you're going to choose between Julio Cesar Chavez and Canelo Alvarez, Julio Cesar Chavez wins. Nobody's going to go to that fight.
No, I agree. I'm going to go back to 2 points ago to make the original point I was going to make. This is Canelo Alvarez's toughest test in his career, I believe. If you look at Victor Ortiz, he weighs in about 165 on fight night as a welterweight by the time he rehydrates. That's what Canelo Alvarez is going to weigh on the night of the fight when he gets in the ring with Josecito Lopez. Will he be the smaller guy? Yes. He won't be the bigger puncher, but the guy has balls of steel. We saw that in the fight against Ortiz. He's been the victim of some bad decisions quite a few times in his career. Josecito Lopez is the toughest opponent in Canelo's career. He's a legit opponent as well, not just because Canelo hasn't fought nobodies, but he's coming to fight, he's coming to win. I don't think he's going to win, but I think that this is going to be a much better fight than people are expecting, regardless of the weight. But to your point, yes, Chavez Martinez is the fight to watch on this night, and it's.
But let me backtrack a little bit, if I'm allowed to backtrack, because David picked Bradley and he picked Pacquiao, so I think I'm allowed to. I'm allowed one at least.
I think I was right on both.
It could have gone either way, right? So you were right, but let's give credit to Josecito Lopez, and that's the first thing I said off the bat. Josecito Lopez is a tough fighter, and not to take anything away from him, he is a good fighter, and he may pose the biggest threat to Canelo Alvarez. But if you're Oscar De La Hoya, and you're gonna come out and paint this as Canelo's coming out party and the big event, Paul Williams wasn't the answer, Kirkland wasn't the answer, Victor Ortiz may have been the answer because there's 2 Mexicans fighting on Mexican Independence Day. Josecito Lopez definitely is not the answer. Now, especially now that Chavez Martinez is the fight that's going to happen, Miguel Cotto would have been the answer. And Miguel Cotto is a good fighter. He's a fighter that fought his balls off against Floyd Mayweather Jr., even though I thought he lost 10 rounds, but he was competitive in the fight to whatever degree you want to say competitive is.
Yeah.
And Mexico against Puerto Rico on Mexican Independence Weekend, that would have been the fight.
Yeah.
That would have been the fight that would have taken away from Chavez Martinez. Chavez Martinez wouldn't have happened on that day if that would have been the fight. And you can protect Canelo from the Cottos.
Yeah.
You just can't, and I'm sure you agree with me, being a
I
Miguel
do.
Cotto lover.
Cotto, but the thing is, Cotto's the bigger draw, and he had already said he wasn't going to fight until December. He's going to get Canelo, I think, in his next fight if he doesn't rematch Floyd Mayweather. And whether or not that's in December, that remains to be seen. I think we've beaten this one pretty much to death, and it's dead. Let's talk about this coming weekend. We've got Amir Khan taking on Danny Garcia, a unification bout now for the IBF and WBA junior welterweight titles. Armando, I'm guessing you have plenty to say about this too.
No, this is actually quick. Amir Khan wins.
Okay.
Obviously, since I'm an Amir Khan fan, and I once predicted he was
top 5 pound for pound.
He wins easily, establishes himself again as a top pound for pound fighter. To piss you off.
I think Danny.
Boxing in the
hallway.
In the hallway. I hated that I like Amir Khan, but I like Amir Khan. He's a good fighter. I
think Danny Garcia is not going to be intimidated by Amir Khan's hand speed, which is what has given him most of his victories. But Danny Garcia is not talented enough to overcome it either. I think this fight gets really messy for a period of time, but Amir Khan's going to win a close but unanimous decision. Another prediction on that fight: Amir Khan wins, fights Floyd Mayweather next. No, I don't think so. Fight Floyd Mayweather next. Oh, well, it remains to be seen. It's going to happen. Glenn Johnson against Fonfora. It's a big fight for Chicago because it's a big Polak community. The Polish fighters love Adamek, Galata, Fonfora. It's going to be packed. Is this it for Glenn Johnson, or does he have one more big fight in him? I hope it's not, but I mean, Glenn Johnson's on the wrong side of his 40s. He can remain competitive, which is a real, flattering comment to him, I guess, at this point. But I win or lose, I think he should wrap it up.
Hey,
and I think we should too.
Hey, Chisora,
Yeah.
really quick, who gets glassed?
I think David Hay's going to win this fight.
I agree. I think David Hay will win. He doesn't need to glass Derek Chisora.
You
but
glassed
he'll
me.
win. But that's it for boxing during dinner. We're getting ready to eat. Alex will edit it in when
Show you
Mark
the food.
brings the food. Boxing during dinner. Catch us next week. And we're getting ready to eat dinner. So catch you next time.